righty. I mean, geez Louise, what an ending for a game, huh? A game that, quite honestly, prior to that last drive or last two drives, I mean, it was just a running fest. Literally, both those teams really doing nothing offensively until the final couple possessions. And, then it all kind of falls as it does. Greetings and salutations. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream. Obviously, this is a game where I was hoping for it to be a little bit more high scoring rather than the Atlanta Falcons having to rely upon kicks from Younghoe Koo the entire time. Of course, Bijan Robinson still yet to find the end zone to an extent. I mean, it's quite unfortunate, but we did see signs of life from the Atlanta Falcons offense, and hopefully that final drive that they went down the field and so easily scored on the Philadelphia Eagles, hopefully it kind of clicks in the offensive coordinator's head that yes, we can utilize this offense in a spread formation and easily function for the remainder of the season, as long as this offensive line is, of course, able to hold up, which they did tonight. In week one, we're in complete shambles against TJ Watt. Tonight, against the pass rush, other Philadelphia Eagles were able to handle their own, and of course, gave Kirk Cousins enough time to be a relevant fantasy contributor. And of course, saved the likes of Drake London for many of us. Kyle Pitts, of course, nowhere to be found in this overall game. But on the other side of the ball, of course, Devontae Smith delivers. Saquon Barkley, like I said in the past, there are going to be times in which we hope that Saquon Barkley doesn't get the rushing touchdown stolen from him, but it's going to happen because Jalen Hurts is just that much of a threat every single time out. So despite the fact that Saquon Barkley was able to score 3 times in week one, you're going to have these games where unfortunately the tush push, the quarterback sneak is going to take precedent and go ahead and elevate Jalen Hurts rather than Saquon Barkley. Either way, let's go ahead and answer questions for the next hour plus in regards to going into week 3, potential waiver wire pickups, potential trades. Again, earlier today, I did put out a video in regards to buy low targets. Hopefully, if you haven't checked it out, you'll go ahead and do so. If not, we'll talk about some of the players that I mentioned in that overall situation. Mr. Freedom Fighter in the chat says Vegas strikes again. Why? What was the spread that all of a sudden it got completely torched there at the end? I mean, I'm assuming that the Eagles were the predominant favorites and all the money was probably on them tonight if I had to guess. Okay, anyway, let's go ahead and let's answer questions, shall we? Anthony C sends in a super chat. Thank you, Anthony. Says Hurts interception lost me the week. Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. Stuff like this is going to happen. It is, the reality of the situation, unfortunately. I know that somebody earlier on had said that the Younghoe Koo PAT ended up losing them the week. I know that someone earlier when the music was rolling did in fact say that they needed Kyle Pitts to outscore Dallas Goedert, and that couldn't happen this week, which again is unbelievable, to say the very least. But again, hopefully, this victory and the efforts in that final drive really do begin to give the Atlanta Falcons the confidence that they need, because they're, sorely missing it within the passing game. They do not trust Kirk, and hopefully that final drive will kind of allow them to open up the offense more instead of having these very tight bunch situations in terms of, formations. They're using a lot of apex where 3 wide receivers are standing next to one another. I mean, yes, I understand you're trying to beat the man coverage, but ultimately spread it out and let Kirk Cousins dominate. And obviously in the final drive was able to deliver the ball down the field. Okay. Eddie J sends in a super chat. Eddie J says the following. I'm 2-0 in a 12-man standard league. Short in receiver. Who would you recommend? Naylor, QJ, Pierce, or Jennings with Debo out? Also got offered Shaheed for Waddle. No, I'd rather have Waddle rest of the season. The fact that they haven't put Tua Tagovailoa on the injured reserve, and the fact that there was a report as of Sunday saying that he hasn't decided that he's going to retire, that he wants to continue to play, leads me to believe that he'll once and for all probably return. As to when that is, we're going to have to wait and see. But I'm not really interested in Shaheed in that regard, unless you're playing in a league in which you're getting yardage points based off return yardage and punt return, kickoff return yardage. Of the available options you mentioned, Jennings probably seems like the short-term answer, which honestly may be the value play in this scenario, especially if in fact Deebo Samuel with the calf strain is going to miss upwards of potentially 3-4 weeks. Otherwise, if somehow, some way, you have an opportunity of picking up Adam Thielen, I don't know if he's available in your 12-man league. I would go ahead and venture to say he's not, but that's probably the most valuable wide receiver that I can think of, especially considering earlier today, the Carolina Panthers organization did in fact announce that Bryce Young is no longer the starter and Andy Dalton will be taking over. Adam Thielen has a lot of value going forward in that regard, but otherwise, QJ is the long-term, Jennings is the short-term, depending on what kind of a need you have there, Eddie. Obviously, with Debo out, I think you can survive with the short-term answer of Jennings in a better offense, and I guess technically more expectation of opportunity in that circumstance. Serge sends in a question. Thank you, Serge. Serge says, I traded CJ Stroud, Flowers, and Chase Brown for Herbert, Kenneth Walker, and Garrett Wilson. PPR, how did I do in the trade? Justin Herbert really can't be started. I think it depends on what else you have in terms of your roster, Serge. Kenneth Walker, once healthy, is going to be perfectly fine. And I think getting Kenneth Walker and Garrett Wilson is a huge upgrade. And I think you won this trade regardless of the fact that you're moving from CJ Stroud to Justin Herbert. But I would like to hope you have something else on roster potentially that can be started at like a top 16 capacity, because I don't think that Justin Herbert on a consistent basis is going to be able to deliver top 16 quarterback performances with the supporting cast that he has within the receiving role. So as it currently stands, I'm excited about the trade. I think you definitely want it, but hopefully you'll have something at quarterback that can definitely help you. Is Shaheed the real deal? I mean, based on the way that the offense is structured and the way that Derek Carr is playing, yes, he is. But again, the deep ball, 70-plus yards down the field, isn't something that is going to be open every week. Eventually, defenses are going to begin to, tighten up in that regard and allow everything underneath, which is the Olave that is eventually going to, take the vast majority of targets and going to be the primary breadwinner of this offense. Bros Pro says poor outing from Pitts. Yeah, to say the very least, poor outing. However, I think they will use him more this season. I mean, what the heck is that? Is that a bug? Come here, mother sucker. Oh my God. I almost Mr. Miyagi didn't grab that thing out of midair. If it comes back again, I'm going to completely just one tap it. Anyway, we're going to hope that a lot of these tight ends that haven't been utilized to a high extent thus far this season, Laporta, Kelsey, Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, will get their opportunities. Now, for other guys like George Kittle, played incredibly well. We'll get more opportunity in the absence of Christian McCaffrey / Deebo Samuel. Of course, Trey McBride, saved by a James Conner fumble into the end zone. Other than that, of course, targets, receptions looking great. Bowers looked great. Evan Ingram dealing with an injury. David Njoku dealing with an injury. Jake Ferguson dealing with an injury. So if in fact you don't have an elite tight end or potentially just want to hit the waivers, there are a lot of options for tomorrow's waiver wire when I go ahead and post that video. Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Luke Schumacher, Jonnu Smith, even Strange, the backup tight end for Evan Ingram for the Jacksonville Jaguars, got himself a lot of opportunity, which again could eventually lead to more opportunity for us, potentially going through the waiver wire if you are playing in a super deep league to still have a viable option at the position. Craig sends in a question, says, I own Hall. Worth using the second priority to get Braylon Allen? Yeah, look, the biggest surprise as of earlier today, Craig, was that Breece Hall did pop up on the injury report. Now, I don't know if that's there's a possibility that it did take place because they play on Thursday and they technically had to report why he didn't or wouldn't have fully practiced, even though they didn't practice in full today. They're going to go through walkthroughs the whole week, but I would assume that is the reason. I think it is safe. I want to assume that Braylon Allen could be available after waivers run, but it's very much so depending on how your league functions. Considering he did score 2 touchdowns, and considering, of course, Breece Hall does have that questionable tag, it's probably in your best interest to utilize the waiver priority, even though I don't want to use the number 2 overall pick on it. But in order to ensure your investment, considering all the injuries we have seen already thus far this season, the volume of injuries is ridiculous, but the key players that it's happening to obviously makes us want to be safe rather than sorry. So in this scenario, yeah, I mean, you might have to. I don't know what else is available in your league, but Braylon Allen might have to be that pickup, because what happens when we get to Thursday, maybe Hall doesn't play because of the injury he's currently dealing with. If no, just save it for the future. Don't need a running back. I have Lamb, London, J-Mo as my receivers. Yeah, I think I don't want to use it, but I think in your circumstance, it's just safe to do it in order to make sure that if anything happens to Hall, you don't just outright lose all of the value. You're able to recoup it in the form of Allen. Let's see here. Rough Time says 1 by 0. Okay, so 0.1 and 0.04 in a tight end. Oh my God. PPR, Henry, Gesicki, Ertz, or Colby. As it currently stands, I'm going to lean towards Hunter Henry. I had hopes that Hunter Henry would have produced in week 1. Obviously, took him a second week to find himself success, but he's going to be the primary pass catcher in that offense. It was pretty much predetermined before the season even began because of the offensive coordinator, because of the lack of talent elsewhere, and because of Jacoby Brissett and his tendencies to get heavy usage out of the tight end position throughout his career. Yeah, Hunter Henry is for sure the go in that circumstance. Let's see here. God's Gang sends in a question. Says, I won my matchup with the London touchdown. Crazy win. Yeah, it is absolutely insane. You would have thought that with no timeouts, with the real interesting call in that entire scenario is the Eagles throwing the ball on that third down. You run the ball, you run out that clock an extra 30 potential seconds, and you don't give Kirk Cousins an opportunity to trot down the field so easily. And with less pressure, I mean, quite frankly, we'll take it though. We will happily take it. Speak Your Piece says, trade offer. Should I trade JJ, Mixon for Kamara and Chase? JJ Mixon for Kamara Chase. Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind getting the Kamara Chase out of that deal. No problem at all. I'll take it. Thank you. I have Tyreek as my wide receiver 1. Yeah. Listen, I think in terms of the value across the board, I think I'd prefer to have Kamara Chase rest of the season personally. Thank you. Dalton Campbell in the live chat says, Andrew, are we cooked? In what form? How much fab for Allen? Depends. Do you have... Yeah, Clint in the Clint Mendoza in the live chat. First of all, do you have Breece Hall? If so, do you need... Or how much fab do you actually have remaining? I don't think we're spending more than I want to say 8 to 10%. Because if you have Hall, you want to prioritize it. You want to make sure you get it. So you might have to spend upwards to 8%, if not more. But again, it depends what else is also available in your league. Because when I look at the landscape in terms of the waiver wire for this week, the names that are going to be out there that may be picked up, Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, Kareem Hunt. Obviously, all three of them are going to try to fill in for the potential of what is vacated now with Isaiah Pacheco going to the IR. Then we have, if in fact, just throwing it out there, Rico Dowdle, if he's available, you would try to get him. Bucky Irving, Braylon Allen, Cam Akers, Ty Chandler, Antonio Gibson, Deontay Foreman. Now, I would have to guess that if you're playing in a 12-team deep league with a lot of bench spots or potential starting spots, the only available of these groups are probably going to be Bucky Irving, Allen, Akers, and Foreman. Everybody else should essentially, well, I guess Carson Steele as well. Everybody else should essentially be already rostered. So, kind of depends on what is available and what you need, and whether or not you, of course, have Hall to begin with. All right, let's see here. Let's see this live chat. Mike Alonso in the chat says, give up Dobbins for Ayuk. I lost Pacheco and Debo today. I have Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison Jr., Higgins, and my running backs are Achane, Monty, Dobbins, and Najee Harris and Javonte Williams. Giving up Dobbins for Ayuk, I don't mind it. Actually, I probably would do it. I think it's a relatively good sell high, buy low potential. And the fact that you know that Debo Samuel is out for the next couple weeks, if not longer, with the potential of a re-aggravation of the calf strain, leads to Ayuk clearly being the number one of the offense and getting himself a lot of opportunity going forward here. Trade to get AK, of course. Man is on a mission, says Flo. Yeah, of course. If you trade for Alvin Kamara, you're probably going to have to pay a lot for it, though. I mean, 4 touchdowns in the first half of a game, that's pretty ridiculous. Let's hear. Kyler Powell in the chat says, how about this trade? Saquon, Debo, Fields, Higgins. Okay, Saquon, Debo, Fields, Higgins. Got it. For Hurts, Pacheco, St. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr. Look, here's the thing. There's a lot of injuries here, and it depends on what exactly St. Brown's timeline is going to look like. If he ends up playing right away, then it's a pretty good position to take that side of the deal. But that's if he's good to go already, Kyler. Flair says, with Debo injury, my flex is kind of thin. Who do I start next week between Judy, McConkey, Chase Brown? Or do I pick up Hunt/Steele? I don't think Hunt is going to be a real consistent part of this. I mean, I know he's going to work out for the team, but I don't think he would immediately be a guy that week 1 is going to step in and take the vast majority of touches. So I wouldn't start him within this given week, taking on the Atlanta Falcons defense. I'd probably lean in the direction of most likely playing Judy against the New York Giants this week, Flair. Zach Jones says, trade away Mike Evans and Singletary for Jamar Chase. If you can afford losing a little bit of that running back depth in the form of Singletary, I would do it. Personally, I would. Ray MG says, I have Kyron Williams, David Montgomery. I want a bench space. Thinking of dropping Raheem Mostert, I have Nick Chubb and Jonathan Brooks on my IR. Dropping Raheem Mostert, I think you're better off, Raheem, looking to go to the HN manager and saying, hey, I want to give you Raheem Mostert and just give me anything back and just see what you can get in return. If you can't get anything and you're trying to still go pick up somebody else because you're relatively thin in terms of your flex and you need someone that you can start for this week, then yeah, I mean, if that's your best option, you got to drop him. KB sends in a super chat. KB says, what does it say? Drake for Aaron Jones. So Drake London for Aaron Jones. Dalton increase Carolina's offense. Dalton is absolutely going to elevate Carolina's offense to a point to where Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, I mean, really even Chuba Hubbard should be relevant going forward. As to how long we're going to have Andy Dalton in there is irrelevant. It's just a matter of we know that right now they are now back on the menu of potential options that you can utilize this upcoming week and going forward. They do take on the Raiders defense, which again played relatively well this last week against the Baltimore Ravens. But as it currently stands, I would venture to say that yes, Andy Dalton definitely injects this offense with more hope for upside, considering as of right now, he is the better quarterback between him and Bryce Young. And we even witnessed that last season. There was a game early last year, I think against the Seattle Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken, where he came in and Adam Thielen had a monster performance. Even Andy Dalton, for fantasy purposes, had a massive performance. Let me see here, actually. If I go look up NFL Week 3 2023, was it Week 3? Maybe it was. If my memory serves me well, yeah, it was Week 3. The Carolina Panthers scored 27 points. Andy Dalton threw the ball 58 times, 361 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. But Adam Thielen had 11 catches for 145 and a touchdown. DJ Chark, 4 catches for 86 and a touchdown. Again, all of the pieces in terms of Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Leggett are going to be relevant now that Bryce Young is obviously on the shelf for the upside of Andy Dalton going forward. Who would have thought that I was going to be saying that in 2024, huh? Interesting. That, we're excited about Andy Dalton becoming a starter of a team. Fizzin sends in a super chat. Thank you, Fizzin. Mixon, Wilson, Ridley for Marvin Harrison, Kamara, and Worthy. Mixon, Wilson, and Ridley for... Okay, so hold up. When I look at this across the board, Kamara, Mixon, I like Kamara. I liked him in the preseason. I still like him now over Mixon, especially considering Mixon's dealing with a little bit of an ankle tweak. Marvin Harrison versus Wilson, relatively close. I had them both as top 10 wide receivers. I honestly could say, based on what we've seen from Garrett Wilson so far, I understand it's been tough for coverage, but they're very similar. So then it's a matter of Ridley versus Worthy, and considering Marvin Harrison's probably going to be missing for, it's not Marvin Harrison, excuse me, Marquise Hollywood Brown is going to be missing for pretty much the entirety of the regular season. I could justify the move. I don't mind the idea, especially without a running game with Pacheco missing. I could justify going for the Marvin Harrison Kamara side. I don't have an issue with it. Ridley, obviously, if Will Levis, just like this last week, can deliver the ball downfield, should be in a better position to elevate Ridley. But ultimately, I think Worthy probably can be just as productive in terms of fantasy production. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of inconsistency, big weeks, slow weeks, but I don't mind the trade. I would take it. Thank you, Fizzin. After Fizzin's question, we had one that came in from Daniel Barnes. Daniel, thank you. Daniel says, I have Caleb and Fields. Drop one and pick up Derek Carr. Yes, you should drop Caleb Williams, pick up Derek Carr. God's Gang sends it a question. Says, who do I go after for a backup to Pacheco? Hearing about Hunt a lot, not sure what to do. Okay, so in regards to the backup position for the Kansas City Chiefs, if in fact they do end up signing Kareem Hunt, he would eventually take over the role as the primary running back. He would be the primary, and again, this is under the assumption that Clyde Edwards does not return. And the reason why I'm leaning towards the idea that that's not going to happen, and I think we can bet on the idea that Clyde Edwards probably doesn't return, is because the reason why he's on the IR is for mental health concerns. So I think 4 weeks is probably not enough to be able to deal with that. Clyde Edwards, hopefully he can go ahead and fight his demons and get through that safely. So we're hoping for the best in his case. But in regards to the running back role of the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, Kareem Hunt had a lot to offer last season as a member of the Cleveland Browns. Now, obviously, he's coming off of the couch, but he did the same thing last year and was quite productive and still finished his RB39 last year. So Kareem Hunt is probably the guy that I want long-term. But in terms of short-term, like if we're trying to find someone to start this upcoming week, it's probably Carson Steele, just to get the rushing production there. Because compared to Samaje Perine, he's been given the go on those rushing attempts. Would you drop Shakir for Henry? I have Likely and Njoku. Good at wide receiver. If you're good at wide receiver, then you can. Khalil Shakir seems to be like the number one kind of wide receiver that at least Josh Allen prefers to throw the ball to. So you could probably get some value out of him in terms of a trade if somebody is interested in that regard. But if not, then yeah, I mean, you can go ahead and make that swap going forward there. Ulysses sends in a super chat, says, should I offer Gibbs and Adams for Ayuk and ETN? No, I'd rather have Gibbs and Adams rest of the season. I understand I can justify the understanding of why you would want Ayuk there, but I prefer Gibbs so highly over ETN in this circumstance. And quite frankly, I prefer Adams. Even with Debo being out, I think Adams still has a lot of sustained value within that offense. So I'm going to keep the Gibbs and Adams side there, Ulysses. Thank you. Cinco2X says, who's number one waiver? And would you use the number one waiver pick? It depends on what's available. I mean, again, the names that I can potentially mention off the top of my head in terms of opportunity guys that could very easily be impact players. Like, again, when I look at the wide receiver position, okay, tomorrow's episode is going to be crazy. I think this is the most waiver wire names that I've ever mentioned in a singular episode. I was just putting it together just moments, obviously while watching the game. I mean, just looking at wide receiver, just like actual theoretical impact players that could be picked up and even used this upcoming week, right? Adam Thielen, Quentin Johnston, Alec Pierce, Juwan Jennings, Josh Reynolds, Jalen Naylor, Andre Yoshivas, Wanda Robinson still, Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney, right? I mean, even Ricky Pearsall in a couple weeks, assuming he's healthy, ready to go. Jordan Whittington, Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Polk, Josh Downs. Like those are just wide receivers, right? I mean, there's also Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Luke Schoonmaker, Zach Ertz, Jonnu Smith, Brenton Strange. Like, it depends on what you need. So, like, I don't know if there's an objective, like, this has to be the number one overall waiver wire pickup of the week because you might need running back, right? Because you've lost an injury. Or you might need wide receiver because you lost Cooper Kupp, right? So I think it just depends on what your necessity is. Is it tight end? Is it wide receiver? Is it running back? And at that point, you can ask yourself, okay, this is what I need. This is what I'll go after. And then, shoot, maybe you need quarterback. Geno Smith, Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Gardner Minshew. I mean, sheesh. That's always a possibility. Let's see here. So, yeah, if you can rebuttal to that in terms of just typing into the chat, Cinco, that'd be great. Thank you. Fizzin says, or swap out Connor for Mixon and swap Kamara for JT. I don't mind that either. That one works as well. So if you prefer that one, Fizzin, I'll take both of them. Either of the two, it's kind of up to your preference. I prefer, honestly, I don't think I have a preference. I think both of them are, honestly, I'd probably rather get JT if possible, but that's just my preference. Otherwise, I don't mind the other trade at all. I was already accepting that one. David Diaz says, would you traded Worthy? I don't even know what the English is here, but okay. Either way, I understand what you're saying. Worthy for Dobbins and Zach Moss. If you need running back depth, I mean, I don't see why not. Zach Moss played 80% of the offensive snaps within the Cincinnati Bengals starting offense. Dobbins, again, has looked great thus far. So you're trading away Worthy and you're getting running back depth that, of course, if you need, immediately makes an impact for your team. So yeah, why not? Let's do that. Seta sends in a question, says, who you think I can get for Pittman, Brian Thomas? Pittman, you probably can't get much value out of unless you can find someone in your fantasy league that had Pittman last year or maybe the year before and like has a emotional attachment to Pittman. I'm assuming everyone who has Pittman right now is absolutely disgusted as to what you have received in terms of fantasy compensation for where you drafted him. And I understand the pain. I can empathize with it. I myself have, a couple fantasy prospects over the course of the last couple weeks that certainly haven't panned out. Josh Palmer. And, that definitely hurts. But in this scenario for Pittman, you're probably holding him. Brian Thomas, I honestly don't even want to trade him. He looks like he's going to take over as the number one wide receiver of this offense sooner rather than later. Yes, Gabe Davis led the team in terms of targets. Second after was Brenton Strange, but Brian Thomas Jr. is still a rookie. He's still learning. He's still going to grow as a player in this offense. And with Christian Kirk not really stepping up, I think Brian Thomas is someone I also want to keep. So I don't want to sell Pittman because I'll be telling him from pennies on the dollar. But in the same vein, Brian Thomas Jr., I don't really want to give up either. Now, if you want to, and if you're like pretty much dead set on it, it depends on what position you're going after. I'd assume you wouldn't trade Brian Thomas for a wide receiver. I would assume that you would try to get an alternative position for him, because why would you trade a wide receiver for a wide receiver unless you were getting a huge upgrade and somebody like was desperate to get Brian Thomas off of your hands? So if you're looking for a running back, I mean, at this point, go scoop, sheesh Louise, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, lower value guys that are still the starters and will continue to maintain as such going forward. Maybe go buy in on Jonathan Brooks before he returns. Alex Hernandez says trade one away. Ramondre, Rashad White, Brian Robinson Jr. I think it'd be easiest right now to sell Brian Robinson Jr. Rest of season value, I think it's very much so dependent on Rashad White's current injury. I think he's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring strain. I don't know how, healthy and or worrisome that should be for us. But as of right now, I think Brian Robinson, if we're trying to trade one away, he's the easiest to trade. And probably you could get most in exchange for him at this current moment in time based on his overall, contributions for fantasy. Aiden0815 says, how do we feel about Kyle Pitts rest of the season? Just like the way that we do with all these other tight ends, we know that this is how the position functions. We know that there's going to be ups and downs, throughout the entire season. And we know not to panic. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you have the alternative option of going and picking up a Hunter Henry or Mike Gesicki and then playing matchups within a given week, you can go ahead and do so. This upcoming week, we know that, of course, the Atlanta Falcons will be taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe that is on Sunday Night Football. So if we're going to be in a situation in which Kyle Pitts takes on the Kansas City Chiefs, they are giving up the most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. Not only in week one did, of course, Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews put up a combined total of a lot of points. But just this last week, Eric All, I think it's Eric Alt, right? Bengals tight end Eric Alt. I think he's the rookie tight end. No, it is Eric All. Eric All Jr. and Mike Gesicki, they both combined for over 10 receptions, over 100 receiving yards. So obviously the Kansas City Chiefs struggling against tight ends. So Kyle Pitts upcoming should be in a decent spot. Maybe, buy low candidate. We'll have to wait and see. But it depends, man. Buying low on a tight end of that caliber, not as interested as trying to go get Laporta in exchange. All right, let's see here. Scrolling down, we had a question that came in from Wazoshi. Wazoshi says, I'm 0-2, but I'm feeling good somehow. 0 running back draft strategy with 3 wide receiver full PPR. Mahomes, J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson, very well. Aaron Jones, okay. CeeDee Lamb, London, Adams. Wow, okay. Yeah, you have a really strong team across the board. Like, Ramondre's played incredibly well. Aaron Jones has been highly efficient. Both of them have receiving upside. J.K. Dobbins has played well. Mahomes is obviously disappointed, but then you get CeeDee Lamb, who's getting better every week. London, who obviously shown sign of life this week, along with Devontae Adams. Kincaid, again, is very slow to get going. Pittman, another one of these options that you can rotate in once bye weeks arise. But otherwise, I think you're looking okay across the board. I'm looking at all these players. J.K. Dobbins is probably the sell high prospect of the group, and maybe you would go after another running back potentially in this circumstance, but you don't have to, considering, again, he's played well. There's nothing really that says you have to trade him in this circumstance. So roster's looking good. I understand you're 0-2, but yeah, it's still early. Still very early in the season. Speak Your Piece says, damn, skipped my question. Did I not answer it? I swear I thought I answered that. Let me scroll back up and let me get to that. Yeah, Speak Your Piece said, JJ Mixon for Kamara and Chase. Yeah, I'll take the Kamara and Chase side. Yeah, I answered it before, but maybe either an ad popped up or potentially you walked away at the time. Apologies if perhaps that was on me, but I'm 100% certain I answered it. Thank you. Let's see here. Noah Curtis sends in a question. Says, DJ Moore and Jordan Mason for Brooks and Wilson. I think I keep what you currently have. Legitimately, I think I keep Jordan Mason and DJ Moore there. I would like to get more in exchange for Jordan Mason. Again, you got to remember, if you're going to get another 3, maybe even 4 weeks, mainly because, again, so this, I did the math already because I looked into this a lot. So Christian McCaffrey is going to be on the IR until week 6. Week 6 is a Thursday night game, and it's a short week. So there's a possibility he's not even ready for that. So then you're going to have Jordan Mason till week 7. But also, the Chiefs have a bye week in week 8. So maybe they don't even play Christian McCaffrey till week 9. There's always a possibility that if you're going to trade Jordan Mason and it's not going to be to the McCaffrey manager, I want some running back depth back better than Brooks. Because again, Brooks is still going to require that he needs 4 weeks to kind of ramp up to a peak self. So Brooks isn't going to take, your starting flex role potentially until like week 8 himself. So we've got time, but in this circumstance, I'm looking for something better, Noah. I want a running back that is playing right now and is productive. Now, the Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore aspect of it, I mean, DJ Moore is not in a fun position with Caleb Williams. Garrett Wilson will improve, but yeah, I want more out of Mason than that. Henry or Gesicki? As of right now, it's Henry. Again, mainly because Gesicki is finding himself a lot of opportunity in the absence of a full-fledged Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Once those options arrive, it's going to decrease the role of Gesicki within the offense in comparison to Henry, where there's literally no threats to him within that offense as a whole. Jake Perez sends in a super chat, says, PPR, I have James Cook, I have Mason, I have Swift, Najee, Irving at my running backs, Lamb, Olave, DJ Moore, Demarcus Robinson, Jaden Reed, Myers. Should I trade DeAndre Swift or Najee Harris for Pickens or Waddle? Yeah, I'd be willing to trade Swift for Waddle. I don't have an issue with that at all. That works for me. Thank you. All right, moving on to another question. We had X Franklin, who says, I lost Puka Nacua, Christian McCaffrey, JJ, Debo. I don't know who to start at wide receiver. Xavier Worthy or what's that other name? RS? Whose initials are RS in the NFL wide receiver? You got me stumped. This is like I got to go to my Patreon rankings and just look for people that have an R in their first name. Let's see here. Who the heck is RS? Because RR is Rashee Rice. Who the heck is RS, brother? I don't even know what that is. Rashid Shaheed. Got it. I had to look around. Going into this week, Rashid Shaheed against the Eagles, I'll probably take Rashid Shaheed there over Xavier Worthy. Seta sends in a question. Says, do I start Judy over Pittman or still start Pittman? This week, the Indianapolis Colts... Let's see here. So Judy against, it's really going to be hard for me to pass up on playing Judy against the Giants because of how great of a matchup it is overall. As for Pittman against the Bears, I don't really love it. I think the Bears have got a pretty good secondary to the point to where, yeah, I probably end up rolling with Judy there. I say that now. By the time I get to Thursday's wide receiver rankings, I will probably have Pittman ranked higher, but I don't like it just because, I want to hope that he's capable because I know he's a talented receiver, and hopefully they wake up and say, maybe we should get our best receiver the ball. But I don't discredit the idea of Judy being a better play potentially there. Jose Rodriguez says Montgomery / Stevenson / St. Brown, Rice, Laporta, Waddle, Shakir, Higgins, Mostert, Christian McCaffrey on the injured reserve. Do I trade Laporta? Traded Stevenson / Waddle for Connor. Thoughts? I would have much rather had Stevenson and Waddle rest the season. So I don't like that. Mainly because, Connor's injury history requires that you have to have Trey Benson on roster. And Stevenson has honestly just played as good as any running back thus far this season. Additionally, Waddle, the fact that they haven't put Tua on the IR leads me to believe that there's a potential in which he could return sooner rather than later. Which again, I'm holding out hope for that. So in this scenario, your team is strong across the board. Hopefully you got the Stevenson side of that deal because it seems like you did. I think that is exactly what happened. So if you got Stevenson and you gave away Connor and you got Waddle as well, then that's a massive W trade for you and you're good to go. But if it's the other way around, I think we've given up a little too much there. Jimmy sends in a question, says, do I move Rachaad White and Terry McLaurin for BTJ? Sorry, Terry McLaurin or BTJ for ETN. Let's do that. Preferably, I'm probably giving away McLaurin, but that's probably fine by me. Rachaad White, Terry for ETN. I'll take the ETN side of that. Xavier says, would you rather have Kelsey or Rice right now? Rice. Yep, I'd rather have Rice. For sure. KB Games 901 says, in a full PPR 12-team league, I have Mahomes, Kyron Williams, Najee Harris, Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore, JSN Pitts, 49ers defense, and Jake Elliott. Yet I'm 0-2. I'm not surprised you're 0-2. Mainly because Garrett Wilson hasn't done anything. DJ Moore hasn't done anything. JSN was absent in week 1. Kyle Pitts was absent in week 2. Mahomes has been absent all season. I'm actually not surprised you're 0-2 in this scenario. Like, do you have pieces? Yes. But I think it's going to get harder for you. I mean, the fact that Kyren Williams is attached to an offense that literally cannot move the ball through the air, it's going to be quite interesting to see how they're able to function. I'm sure that Matthew Stafford is a good enough quarterback to still elevate the weapons around him, but going up against the San Francisco 49ers this week, that's going to be a tough one. Najee Harris, more of his workload is going to be dug into by Jaylen Warren as we progress here. Jaylen Warren's one of these potential buy low trade targets that I mentioned earlier on today's episode. Outside of that, you really can't move anything. You could try to sell high on JSN and try to go pick up somebody that has been playing at a lower level as of late. But I'm not surprised, unfortunately, based on the lack of consistency from your players, that ultimately you've been sitting in this position. If I was in your spot here, considering, again, you didn't really mention, if that's what your depth consists of, JSN sell high maybe. If not, see if somebody wants to take Kyren off your hands, because really, with Puka and Kupp on the IR potentially, he is a candidate that could end up landing there in the next couple of days. That offense is going to be something I'm not really too interested in the short term. You could try to stick through it and suffer through it with Kyren, but that might be something that you want to move on from and see if you can go and get a better running back in this circumstance. YG sends in a question, says, no joke, do I sell London as my wide receiver 2 right now? He looks good. The looks he was getting today weren't too promising. Well, here's the thing, right? There were multiple instances in which, quite frankly, Kirk Cousins just wasn't giving him the ball. But in terms of selling him, you could definitely try to. Why not? If you can go get somebody that's a better overall receiver, Ayuk, Olave, maybe even potentially Jamar Chase, trade up for it. Somehow make a deal. I don't know. Give something else along with him. Do it. I think that his value is going to be sustained. I think this offense is only getting better week over week with more experience with one another. But if you want to trade him, you absolutely can. Christopher Garza says, how do we feel about Ayuk? All signs are pointing up. Again, even before today's injury information regarding Deebo Samuel, I was already on pace with this video in regards to we have to trade for him because they take on the Rams this week. Again, the last 2 weeks, the Rams secondary has been torched by Jameson Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receivers on the outside. And Ayuk should be able to deliver a huge performance here. If you can get him now, you should do so before he has himself an explosive performance. Now that he's also without Deebo, there's even a greater potential for his upside in this upcoming performance here. Dylan Liu sends in a question, says 12-man full PPR, Purdy, Gibbs, Kamara, DJ, Garrett Wilson? Yeah, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice, Ferguson, Schumacher starting. Tank, Najee on the bench. Very well. These wide receivers aren't playing out as I wanted. Look to trade or sit one. So considering you have DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson, and Rashee Rice doesn't move. You have Gibbs and Kamara, which don't move as well. Schumacher's good to go. So it's a matter of, can you upsell DJ Moore or Garrett Wilson? And at this current moment, I don't think you can upsell them. All you can do is potentially downsell them unless you find someone in your league that truly does believe in their potential rest of the season. If I was in your league, I would be trying to take Garrett Wilson off of your hands, ultimately. So I think it's just a matter of as long as you can find a deal where you are not selling Garrett Wilson for dirt cheap compared to where you drafted him, end of the first, beginning of the second, then you're fine. But ultimately, I don't think you're going to be able to do so because of how he produced over the course of the first 2 weeks of the season. So it's more of you want to hold on to him, wait, and then proceed. If, in fact, he plays better this upcoming Thursday against the New England Patriots, you would then sell him subsequently after if you're still trying to get out on the situation if you don't like what you see on Thursday. Indrajit says, would you trade Bowers for Kelsey? Ultimately, I think I would. Yeah, I think I'm pretty confident in doing so. Yeah. I don't like the idea of trading. So here's the thing. I'd hate to be on the wrong side of history and trade away Bowers and he finishes as tight end 1 overall. Because, Laporta did it last year and Bowers is already just making such a huge impact. I'd hate to do that. That would really, that'd fuck up my whole year, right? So in this scenario, I'm going to say, do what you prefer. I would do it because I'm a risky son of a gun and I play in a lot of leagues. If you play in one league and you're like, listen, Bowers has not failed me yet. They're going to continue to give him the ball. I'm just going to stick with it. Then that's fine. Now, if you told me, hey, Andrew, I can trade Bowers and get Laporta, I wouldn't even blink. But Kelsey, with the age, with all the the lack of production recently, I can understand the hesitation. Ibrahim says, in a full PPR 10-man league, Pacheco is injured. I have Hurts, Kyron, Hill, Rice, Neighbors, Andrews. The only RB I have on my bench is Warren. Should I pick up the Kansas City or Bucky Irving? Is Warren the best option? Yeah, Warren is really good. I mean, going forward again, he obviously just a couple weeks ago was dealing with a hamstring injury. He did outsnap Najee Harris in week 2 and did get himself 9 rushing attempts. So the more opportunities he gets, the more he's going to prove that he's the most efficient back on this team. And once he starts getting into that receiving utilization, which again is going to be a huge part of this offense, considering, of course, Justin Fields trying to get the balls out of his hands quickly, besides scrambling, he's going to, obviously get the ball out because of his offensive line not playing the greatest. But in this circumstance, if I was in your position, I'd probably try to pick up either Carson Steele or, if you're looking for the long term of it, I mean, potentially Kareem Hunt. But look, here's the thing. Carson Steele's probably the safer of the pickups, mainly because Kareem Hunt, there's no guarantee that he even gets signed. They might work him out and say, you know what, we're good with what we got. We don't really want to have to look elsewhere, but we'll have to wait and see. It's Magic says, where do you have Kamara rest of the season? Kind of where I did in preseason. Like earlier this year, the highest I had Kamara, and it fluctuated after, of course, he had a little bit of a back injury in the training camp, but I had him at like 12 to 14. And early on, I had him at like 11, 12, because that's pretty much what he was producing last season. And he finished as the number 13 overall back last year. And the fact of the matter is he only played so many games. I mean, he got suspended for the first 3, and then he missed the final 2 because of injury. So even with 5 games out, the guy was still the top 12 RB in fantasy. So that's kind of where we value him. I mean, it's still going to be in the same position because it's not like anything has changed. Alvin Kamara is still one of the most talented backs in the NFL. Also, who do you like rest of the season more, Jameson Williams or JSN? Really good question. I think I trust, based on what I've seen already, Jameson Williams more. Based on what I've seen already. If it wasn't for the 18 total targets that he's gathered in the first 2, I understand that JSN's coming off a week where he had 16 targets. Jameson Williams, from what I've seen, I think I trust that potential more. And honestly, I trust that offense more. All right, let's see here. Moving on, we had a question that came in from Kirchhoff's number 1 fan. Good name. Where art thou question, though? All right, Hector. Hector says, in a 2-flex full PPR 8-team league, I have Pacheco, Jordan Mason, Bijan. Wide receivers are Chase, Wilson, DK, Drake, London, Marvin Harrison Jr. Do I make a trade for a running back? Look, unless you're trading Mason to acquire running back talent, it says, or do I ride with the squad and make a deal with Christian McCaffrey when Christian McCaffrey comes back? So in your scenario here, Hector, you're going to trade for Christian McCaffrey. That's what you need to do. If you don't trade for Christian McCaffrey, you have to trade away Mason, and that's how you get running back talent. Bijan Robinson is probably a guy that, I mean, I didn't expect him to not score a touchdown tonight. I mean, how many total yardage did he have? Let's see here. NFL week 2. Let's just check this really quickly. So Bijan Robinson ended up finishing with 97 on the ground and a total of 25 through the air on 4 receptions. So he finishes with what? Barely 14 fantasy points in like a half PPR. Bijan is another one of these guys that if I can go and trade for right now, I'm doing so. So in your circumstance here, Hector, I'm not trading Bijan. I'm trading the Pacheco. I mean, sorry, not Pacheco. I'm trading Jordan Mason to get talent, or I'm trading somebody else to get Christian McCaffrey on your roster so that you can have the full, completion of that Exodia, which is that San Francisco 49ers backfield. So in this circumstance, I mean, you're pretty stacked across the board. You might be able to use some of your wide receiver depth to also go and get a running back. Jordan Mason with somebody else to go get other running back talent. You could very easily go in and buy in on Jonathan Taylor's, Josh Jacobs out there if you wanted to. But I would go knock on the door of the Christian McCaffrey owner, see if he's willing to give you McCaffrey, or vice versa, him take Mason off of you and give you running back depth back. To the Max sends in a question. Says, I started 2-0. Do you see any trades? In a full PPR, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 1 tight end league. My team consists of Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Connor, Nico Collins, Flowers, Reed, Laporta. My bench is Mayfield, Brian Robinson Jr., McLaughlin, Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Worthy. At this point, considering all that you have, Brian Robinson Jr., could be a move where you go and trade him and you go get Mason. If somehow, some way that Mason manager is like, honestly, this is a ticking time bomb. Once McCaffrey comes back, I lose all value in this circumstance. It may be in your best interest to go and just get him, not only because you want to use his value right now, but you also want to ensure that even when Christian McCaffrey does return, you have that security blanket. You have the insurance policy ready to go, so nothing happens. You don't get burnt there. I think that's the only thing I would potentially ever suggest in your scenario. Otherwise, pretty solid team across the board. Obviously, it makes sense that you're 2-0 to the max. Again, guys, I want you to understand that your record right now is irrelevant. I understand that many people look at their record and think, oh man, my season's over, I'm 0-2, or oh man, I'm 2-0, I'm going to win this league. Record is irrelevant. All that matters is you're able to survive injuries. That's it. If you want to win in fantasy, you have to survive injuries. Some people you get unlucky. It is what it is. But ultimately, it's just going to be purely a matter of if you survive the injuries, are you lucky enough to do so? And then additionally, if you get hit with injuries, do you pick up the right guys off waivers? If you're able to, if they're available, fantastic. Everything pans out in your direction. But it's a matter of truly luck. It is going to be luck for a lot of what we're going to see going forward. And even if you're 0-2, there is still a lot of time. Additionally, especially like there are going to be 0-2 teams in your league that just have high scoring teams, but they just lost because they played against the top two team in terms of potential scoring in the given week. That's why some of the leagues that I play in don't have week-to-week matchups. It's literally, we're going to play 17 weeks of fantasy football, 0 head-to-head matchups. Whoever scores the most points with their starting lineup wins it all, right? Those are like obviously less interactive. You can't text your friends and say, hey, I just fucked up your team this week. Like, best of luck next time. You obviously can't shit talk and do all that kind of jazz, which obviously is very fun in the circumstance of fantasy football, but it also doesn't hurt as much because you could score 150 points in a given week and still lose because you took on Kamara this week. A team had Kamara and James Cook and just rattled your cage and destroyed you. You don't get anything for it, but you get the plus points. Your record still doesn't show how valuable your team could potentially be. Number one waiver, should I use it on Steele? I wouldn't. I mean, unless you're in desperate need of a running back and you don't have, and if you were a Pacheco manager, I think that's the only way that I would ever do it. Tomorrow, we're going to solidify exactly where I go ahead with my number one waiver wire priority. Again, tomorrow's waiver wire episode is going to be the biggest one I've probably ever done because there is so much potential for upside with a lot of these running backs receivers going forward, Carson Steele included, but it's very dependent on what you need. If in fact you, again, are a Pacheco manager, you probably need to invest in that for sure, just to make sure you don't lose any initial value and can recoup it immediately in that circumstance. Craig sends in a question, says, I traded Stevenson for ETN after week one. Was that a mistake? Time will tell. I mean, I don't think there's an objective nature to determine whether that was a mistake right now. I think in about 4 weeks, depending on ETN's production in comparison to Stevenson, I think that will answer itself. But we're going to hope for the best in that scenario and hope that ETN can continue to score touchdowns because that is really what is keeping him above water thus far, considering how bad this team has been, specifically the Jaguars. Andrew, do you think Deontay will be serviceable now with Dalton? Yes, he should be. Dalton is a veteran quarterback that can actually complete passes. Bryce Young last week had 84 passing yards. Like, I'm almost 100% confident that we're not going to see a single game where Andy Dalton has less than 150 passing yards. I don't think it's possible. It's not even in his genetics in this circumstance, especially the way that they're going to use him. Like, the swap is being made because the owner of the team called in and said, I'm done. Let's make a swap. Because the head coach wouldn't change that. Now, unless, 21 hours ago, or what was it? Like at least 24 hours ago, after they got completely cooked by the Chargers, the head coach said, Bryce Young is our quarterback. I don't want to hear any questions about him. Bryce Young is our quarterback. He said it multiple times during an interview. 24 hours later, that decision has changed. So I think it's the owner mainly changing it because he's like, listen, we can't even sell tickets for $25 here. No one's buying the hot dogs. No one's buying the beer. I'm running out of money here. We need to put asses in seats. And the way we do it is with Andy Dalton. And they're not wrong. So Deontay is definitely going to have value going forward along with Andy Dalton and whoever plays running back there. As of right now, Chuba Hubbard, until otherwise noted. Let's see here. Farouk04 says, hey, Andrew, who do you think should be first? Jennings, Tyler Johnson, Quentin Johnston, Carson Steele, Alec Pierce, or Tutu Atwell? Of the players that you mentioned, Carson Steele would probably be the one that's the top priority. Of those that you mentioned, of course. To the maxes, I forgot to mention 12-team full PPR. Let me go back up here to the max. I think you're good. Yeah. Again, it's the Brian Robinson move that is the most valuable for you at this moment, and at least could get you the most back in return. Mr. 305 says, what a game tonight. Are Steele and Akers up next, man? Yeah, I mean, look, as of right now, Akers is obviously an insurance policy for Mixon under the assumption that he potentially doesn't play. Obviously, Dameon Pierce did end up missing last week, so Cam Akers could fill in for Mixon if, in fact, he does not play this week. But yeah, Steele is the next man up in terms of potential running backs that could, in the next 6 to 8 weeks, technically, be the lead back of this team. In terms of rushing attempts, of course. Eddie J sends in a question. Says, I got Kelsey, dropped likely for Henry or Gesicki. I think if you can't trade away likely, I'm still holding on to him at this point. Yeah, I'm probably still holding on to him. Just want to give it a couple more weeks here. Someone just said, just joined, but did he give a take on Pitts? Yeah, give him one more week. When I'm saying one more week, specifically, give him good matchups. Like, when he takes on Kansas City this upcoming week, Kansas City's given up the most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends this season. They got torched in week 1, and they got torched in week 2 by tight ends. So Kyle Pitts should be in line for a pretty big performance here. And hopefully the final drive of that game, where Kirk Cousins was able to literally take the team down the field in 4 plays and score a touchdown. Hopefully we see far more of that offense. I understand that they want to play these like tight formations, very McVay-esque, where you have very similar formations, but you're running different plays out of it. I understand they're trying to re-emulate a lot of that bullshit, but run the ball when you want to run the ball. But when you're going to throw, spread it out. Let these receivers have some space to make plays. Otherwise, there was no separation found from receivers in the first half of this game. Every single pass was caught and immediately tackled, or they were already on them. Let's see here. Ed Areno sends in a question. Says, in a 12-man half PPR league, I have Rashad White, DeAndre Swift, Tyreek Hill, Nico Collins, Ayuk, Mark Andrews, Kamara owner. Okay, so Mark Andrews. Kamara owner wants to trade for Nico. Thoughts? All right, great. Give us Kamara. Thank you very much. Outside of that, I mean, unless you're getting a wide receiver in return, okay, you're playing in a half PPR. You need a running back. So if the Kamara owner says, hey, I'll give you Kamara for Nico Collins, I could justify it for sure, because in a half PPR and your RB2 being Swift, that works for me. Now, unless you can go out and potentially trade for something better than Kamara, if someone's going to give you Jonathan Taylor or someone's going to give you Josh Jacobs theoretically, then we could go for those for Nico Collins. But if you don't want to dish out Nico Collins, then that's a completely different conversation. But if you're going to dish him for a running back, it works. I understand that you have Tyreek Hill. Ayuk will get better over time. Tyreek Hill, again, even with a lesser quarterback, is still capable of being a 15 fantasy point per game player, even more. He is such a talent that, honestly, a lot of the passes that Tua throws him aren't the most accurate. A lot of the time, Tyreek Hill has to slow down for the ball. Tyler Huntley was signed to the practice squad. Tyler Huntley's been able to be an efficient quarterback in the past. So maybe. We'll see. Wait. What did this trade say? What is this question? It said trade Jefferson for Olave and London. Yo, you would have to have so many injuries at wide receiver for that to be something that I would ever consider, but I'd consider it. If you need the wide receiver depth, sure. Because you're practically in this scenario, John, you're trading a first round pick for a second and a third. That's what you're doing effectively. And I don't mind it. But again, you're going to need the wide receiver depth, then you would go for it. Jordan Mason for Pacheco? No, I would never. I don't think I would trade Jordan Mason for Pacheco. The whole question is Pacheco's injury, once he returns, is he going to feel himself? Like, are we going to need a couple weeks for him to, like, finally get back to being full Pacheco? Like, I don't know how much of his, like, didn't Mark Andrews have this fibula injury last year? Isn't that what he sustained? If that's what exactly it was, it took a while for Mark Andrews to find, him being back himself. So that could be the same thing for Pacheco, unfortunately. But I think it's very dependent. Dark Bloodin 001 says, in a 10-team full PPR, JT, Jacobs, JJ, Neighbors, JK, Pittman, I have AD Mitchell, can be dropped. BTJ, fantastic. And Cooks. We'll see about Cooks. Maybe one more week of opportunity, and then maybe we drop him. Looking for better wide receiver depth. Suggestions. Yeah, I mean, listen, considering what you have available at running back, if you want wide receiver depth, because of the full PPR format, you're trading J.K. Dobbins today and or tomorrow, and you're trying to go get a wide receiver of the. I mean, again, it depends on how sharp your league is. In a 10-team league, you could go get some value. Like you could go get a Rashee Rice. I think you could, especially if that team is dealing with running back injuries. You're basically going to the teams who have McCaffrey or potentially, let's say, for example, Pacheco, and have lost running back depth recently. And you're going to ask them, hey, do you want a running back? I got J.K. Dobbins. What is your best receiver? And if it's a receiver that is something that interests you, then let's go for it. But the Rashee Rice potential caliber player, I'd be interested. Mike Evans, I'd be interested. Chris Godwin's not bad. I mean, listen, what he's been doing as of late has been very impressive. Yeah, if you're looking for wide receiver depth, you can definitely find it in that kind of an instance. Ayuk is not a bad option to go after. Jamar Chase is obviously the total upside, in which maybe you would have to give away BTJ and J.K. Dobbins, but if you could do it, do it. Or maybe J.K. Dobbins and Michael Pittman and do it. Fuck it, let's go for it. LOL says, pick up Cowing or Jennings. Who the heck is Cowing? Who the heck is Cowing? LOL, did you perhaps correct the statement? Let me see here. Control F. LOL. From Niners? I know who Jennings is, but who the heck is Cowing? Cowing on the Niners. Who the heck? Am I crazy, guys? Who the heck is Cowing? Jacob Cowing. Don't want him. Nope. I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. Nope. Give me Jennings. Give me Jennings. I don't want to deal with no. I'll just take Jennings. Thank you very much. Just the fact that I have to ask as to who it is enough for me. Let's see here. Bug Catch says, Bug Catcher, lost Pacheco and Cup. I'm thinking of a trade for Jacobs centering around Brian Robinson. Am I panicking, or is this smart? I mean, listen, if you can trade away Brian Robinson Jr. and get Josh Jacobs, you should do it. Let's see here. Lenny V23 says, my team is injured. I have Debo, Kenneth Walker, Jake Ferguson. Wow. Should I try to move on from them and make a trade for the future? Look, here's the thing. Kenneth Walker shouldn't be out for more than just that 1 week. He should be ready to go for this week. Debo Samuel is a potential 2 week to 3 week instance. If you want to trade him, you certainly can. But again, you're going to have to try to get back a wide receiver that is in that top 12 conversation still. Hopefully somebody of the caliber of, like I just mentioned, Rashee Rice. If you can get him, you get him. Maybe even, I don't want to go as far as saying like Devontae Smith for sure, but I'm a huge fan of Devonta Smith this season. I've been screaming from the rooftops for a while now that that's one of my favorite receivers this year, and I drafted him everywhere. And hopefully, I mean, I'd assume that it's going to be very difficult to trade him after tonight, but you never know. Just depends on what teams in your league specifically want Debo. Otherwise, again, the guys that I want mainly in terms of today's buy low episode were Chase, Ayuk, Olave, London. Those are the wide receivers I wanted. Keenan Allen, but you're not trading Debo for Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen could be far cheaper in this circumstance. Chase McGraw sends in a question. Chase, where is your question? He says, let me know what you think. Okay, let me go ahead and scroll back up, Chase. Chase says, traded Hurts / Najee Harris, Mooney for Pittman, Pollard, and Zamir White, and Jordan Love. Okay, you traded Hurts, Najee, and Mooney. Okay, very well. For Pittman, Pollard, Zamir White, and Love. Okay, so it says, I have Debo, A.J. Brown, and Pacheco injured. So basically, you recoup running back depth with Pollard. You get a wide receiver, which again should be of value sometime in the near future. Zamir White, just in case, he's going to have a decent week this week against Carolina because, again, Carolina cannot stop a soul in the running game. And then you get Jordan Love for the future. Okay, honestly, I think that's okay. For what you gave and what you got in return, I am perfectly fine with that trade based on what you need in this overall scenario. I think even if it wasn't with the injuries that you've sustained, I think I think your side of the deal ultimately is the stronger of the two, Chase. So you've taken the better half of that overall situation. Thank you for the question. Lethal Jake sends in a question, says, in a PPR Start 3 wide receivers. Should I maybe trade A.J. Brown or just wait? I also got Marvin Harrison Jr., Nico Collins, Keenan Allen, and Wan'Dale Robinson. My running backs are James Cook, Montgomery, and Brian Robinson. I don't think you have to make a move here. I understand he's dealing with an injury, could be out for potentially 2 to 3 more weeks, depending on how severe the hamstring is. If you want to, you can, but if you're going to trade A.J. Brown, you legitimately need to get back Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown, like somebody of that caliber, legitimately. Like if you trade A.J. Brown right now, I would say you take A.J. Brown, you take another player, and you go after Jamar Chase. That's what you would have to do. But I don't think a Jamar Chase owner who's gotten 0 contributions from him wants to go and get a player that's injured. So in this scenario, trading away an injured player is probably going to be difficult unless someone's going to give you like, oh, here, take my Puka Nacua, I'll take your A.J. Brown. It's like, we don't want Puka. He's already injured as well. Like, we're trying to get healthy here. In this scenario, Lethal Jake, unless you're getting back some sort of wide receiver talent that you shouldn't be able to get, you're probably just waiting it out. Rookie from Arizona. He means cowherd? I don't know if that's what he means. Jacob Cowing is the name. Sergio sends it a question. It says in a 12-man full, was this half PPR league? Lineup for week 3. Purdy, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, Chris Olave, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Zamir White, Jerome Ford, Jameson Williams, Christian Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Michael Wilson, Douglas, and Vele. In your certain scenario here, Sergio, Purdy gets to start at quarterback, Jonathan Taylor and Kyron Williams, Chris Olave starts, Jameson Williams is your wide receiver 2. Probably play George Pickens in your flex, and no mention of any tight ends here, so that's pretty much it. If it's a double flex league, your second flex most likely in this kind of a format is either Deontay Johnson and or Zamir White, and that'll probably be determined as we get further in the week here. Polsky sends in a question, says, pick up Shakir, Tolbert, or Josh Reynolds. Between the 3, I'd rather have Shakir just because I know the offense and what it's capable of, but ultimately the impact player short term is Josh Reynolds based on the volume of targets he's getting and his contributions in terms of fantasy production. So if you're like, hey, I need a consistent wide receiver 3 immediately, I'm in trouble with injuries, Josh Reynolds is the guy. Otherwise, it's Shakir for the long-term hope that he can eventually take over that number 1 wide receiver role of the offense, which almost he pretty much is kind of confirmed over the course of his opportunities the last 2 weeks. Caleb Graves sends in a question. Trade/hold. Rashad White. Do I target T. Pollard or Brian Robinson? I don't mind the pivot to Tony Pollard. I don't mind it at all. If Rashad White's injury is an issue, you don't have Bucky Irving and it's on somebody else's roster, I'm probably in a position where I'm okay with a pivot there in that situation, especially if you're struggling at running back and this injury is going to potentially hold out Rashad White for a couple weeks, the hamstring, and you don't have Bucky Irving to fill in for that. I don't mind the pivot. Ben says, stop disrespecting the future number 1 wide receiver of the 49ers. That would be incredible. That would be incredible. That this would go down in history as the day that Andrew made the worst take of his life. It's not really a take. It's more of a legitimately just didn't know who he was. Legitimately. No clue. What's your take on Jalen Naylor? Depends. Is Justin Jefferson healthy? If Jefferson's healthy, Naylor is probably like a top 50 wide receiver, but near 50 going into the given week. Drop Goddard or likely for Hunter Henry? I'd be willing to drop Goddard in this scenario. JK says, got offered Garrett Wilson and Scary Terry for Rice. I probably keep Rashee Rice there. I'm not even joking. If it's a full PPR, I'm probably keeping Rashee Rice. It'd be very difficult for me to give him up based on how everything has transpired for that offense recently. Braden sends in a question. Says, in a 10-team full PPR, any moves? Lamar, JT, Kamara, Wilson, Jamo, Bowers, Shaheed, Ridley, Moss, Mostert. Okay, so considering your starting lineup is really, really strong, I don't think you technically need to make moves. Obviously, I'd love to sell high on Shaheed, but that's, of course, requiring that someone in your league wants to buy Shaheed and give you a wide receiver that, again, we want theoretically. So that in itself is probably difficult. If you're playing in a league, like if you were playing in one of my leagues, and you came to specifically me and said, would you like Shaheed? I would never take him off your hands. I think it's just a matter of principle or a matter of like preference as to what kind of a wide receiver you have on roster. Very seldom do I want to have those boomer bust wide receivers that are going to have to make a play on a 70-yard reception in order to make a week. But sometimes it works, and maybe they stay consistent. You never know. Maybe the offense just continues to funnel the ball in his direction enough to where he is relevant for the remainder of the season. Shit, he could finish as a top 24 wide receiver. I just don't believe it. I don't trust that it's going to be that consistent every week with touchdowns every time. Marion Garcia says, in a full PPR trade, Tank and Ford for Aaron Jones. Yeah, give me Aaron Jones there for sure. Bonk sends in a question. PPR, trade Hopkins and Charbonnet for Waddle. Yep, give me Waddle there. Thank you very much. Vic sends in a question. Half PPR, 12 team. We are Debo, Waddle, Kirk, Keon, Myers, Watson. What do I do? Trade Debo, trade Waddle, trade Kirk, trade Keon, trade Myers, trade them all. Rinse the whole wide receiver core, get a brand new one. At least bring back 3 players with the 6 that you have. That's literally what you kind of have to do. Otherwise, you're in trouble. At very best, you keep Waddle. Everybody else is going to have to move, or you're going to have to hit the waiver wires and hope that you strike while the iron's hot and get the players that immediately make it, a certain impact. Zay, my number 3 with Lamar, or do I start J-Mo? Good question. Who's your flex? Because if Zay's your wide receiver 3, you kind of have to continue to play him. But J-Mo's got to start in that flex, most likely, Tyler Von Essen. In this scenario, if you can't manage to start all 3, maybe you're in a position where you sell a higher tier receiver for a running back. And if your running backs aren't of the top tier quality, you can end up getting one with a wide receiver trade of that caliber. Okay, I think I've caught up relatively there. Again, I appreciate all of you who have come through on this Monday night. Again, tomorrow morning, we will be posting our updated waiver wire potential pickups for week 3. Again, there's a lot of names. I'll go through the list again. In terms of wide receivers alone, Quentin Johnston, Adam Thielen, Alec Pierce, Jawan Johnson, Ricky Pearsall, Josh Reynolds, Jordan Whittington, Jalen Naylor, Andre Yoshivas, Jalen Tolbert, Wando Robinson, Jalen Polk, Jerry Jeudy, Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney. There are players that across the board, based on Yahoo, a vast majority of these players are rostered in less than 20% of leagues. Now, if you play in a 14, 16, even a 12-team league where it's a super flex, triple flex, whatever, they're probably, I'd say maybe 50% are gone, but there are a lot of players here with 8%, 2%, 1% rostership that are potentially going to be available for grabs here, especially a lot of tight ends that maybe if in fact you, again, don't have essentially consistent tight end production, you can find it with Gesicki or Ertz, Schoonmaker going forward here. Despite, everything that's gone on with tight end, it will get better. It is a lot of ups and downs, but ultimately it's just kind of a waiting game to finally get your guy on the right track. Board Action says, hey, Andrew, didn't see you were live. Tough loss tonight, but I had a great time watching the games. And see Promise. I was wondering if you could check the trade I sent you on Discord. Yeah, let me go ahead and check right now. Let me open up my Discord real quick. Where are you at here? Okay, so I'm looking at this trade right now. Okay, so you would theoretically be receiving Laporta and Jamar Chase, and you would be giving up Mark Andrews and Bijan Robinson. What is the running back depth that you have on this team, though? That's the real question at this time. Because I don't really want to sell Bijan. I almost want to buy Bijan right now, but also I kind of want to buy Jamar Chase to an extent. But you're getting Laporta for Mark Andrews. I think that's a relatively good swap in that scenario. I think if you do end up getting the Laporta Chase side, I'm fine with it, especially in a full PPR format. Let me see what the rest of your team looks like again here. So if that is the circumstance, what is this? Okay, let me find your team that has Robinson, Kamara. No, that's not the team. Jordan Mason. No. Where is the team here that has Robinson that you're giving up? There it is. Kamara. Yeah. Nakua. Yep. Mark Andrews. Yeah. So that's why you're trading it. That's fine. I don't mind it. Let's do the trade. Especially if it's a full PPR. If it's a half PPR, I'm a little bit hesitant on it, but ultimately I'm still relatively confident in the trade value of it. I'd rather have Laporta, and even though Bijan, Chase, I want to have them both on roster, I think they're relatively equals rest of the season here. So Jamar Chase is on the uptick. Just give it some time. All right, Young Money in the chat says, hey, bud, PPR, C. Williams or Derek Carr? Yeah, I'll take Derek Carr rest of the season. I mean, not rest of the season. I mean, I guess it's just a matter of when Caleb Williams finds himself success. But right now, Derek Carr next week against Philly, I'll take that against their secondary. Derek Carr's looked great. MIGZ says, Brian Robinson and Hawkinson or Bowers and Pacheco? Look, here's the issue, right? Can I wait for Pacheco to return? I have to quite literally wait 6 to 8 weeks. So there's 8 fantasy games potentially where Pacheco is going to miss. I mean, if it's me, it's a matter of, is Brian Robinson or Bowers going to make more of an impact for my roster rest of the way here? And considering your running backs are James Cook and Jonathan Taylor, it's just a matter of like figuring out what you believe is going to be more of an impactful play as it currently stands rather than the rest of the season, because you need to gather a lot of wins in the next 8 weeks here to ensure that you're even in the playoff conversation. So personally, I probably hold on to the Brian Robinson side just to have that additional flex, just in case an injury happens to one of your running backs, and that's probably the way that I would run it just to be safe. Flo says, okay, we took care of that. Juan Jimenez in the live chat says, Superflex 12-team PPR. Who should I get for Dobbins? Cup, etc.? Question mark. I'm not getting Cup. Oh, sorry. I think what you meant by Cup, etc. is like trading away Cup. Look, it depends on what you need ultimately. Like, if you're playing in a Superflex format and you need a quarterback, you could very easily move Dobbins for one. But if you're going to trade Dobbins, but you still need running back depth, then you're going to essentially try to trade up to try to get someone of the caliber of a Jacobs, Taylor, Bijan, ETN, players that are top tier quality players, but just haven't produced thus far. Typically, that's going to be hard to do because you're probably going to need more than Dobbins, but you're knocking on the door and just kind of implying that you have interest and see what they want to send in return. Now, if in fact you're going for a receiver in exchange for trading away Dobbins, again, I am still on I'm trying to get Chase, Olave, Ayuk, London, potentially Garrett Wilson side of that conversation. Dan Young sends in a question. Thank you, Dan. 10-team full PPR. My quarterbacks are Tua and Purdy. Who should I pick up from the waivers and go with? Carr, Darnold, or Baker? I'm going with Baker there. Yeah, I'll take Baker for sure. And I'd honestly essentially start him going forward. Daniel Barnes says, drop Tua for Geno Smith or Carr. Personally, I do really like, let me look at the Saints schedule. I like Geno's schedule coming up here to the point to where I'm going to start him the next 2 weeks in one of my leagues. As for the upcoming schedule for the Saints, taking on the Eagles, taking on the Falcons, the Chiefs, doesn't have a bad schedule. Personally, I'd probably, again, Derek Carr scares me. I know he's played well, but he scares me. I'd probably lean towards playing Geno in this scenario. I'd probably play Geno there going forward. But, I mean, if you can, Daniel Barnes, pick them both up. Just have both the options. Tyler Vaughn says, Lamar, JT, Achane, Collins, Wilson, Flowers, McBride, Stevenson. Wow, okay, that is a really good starting lineup, dude. Okay. My bench consists of Ford, Mostert, Reed, and Shaheed, and JMO. Got it. So that is why you can't play JMO. So, wow, okay. So, considering what I'm seeing here, Tyler, geez, I guess you're just playing matchups going forward. Like, you might be in a position to where, like, okay, so hear me out. I don't want to trade away JMO. I don't want to trade away Flowers. Considering Amon-Ra St. Brown's dealing with an injury, you may be in a position to where you're even starting JMO because Amon-Ra might miss weeks, might miss time. So you're kind of just holding and sitting in place. You don't really have to make a move. Like, yes, you have depth that bleeds into your bench, but it's not like that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. Now, in your scenario, you have Shaheed and Jaden Reed there as well. I mean, shoot. You think you can go and take Shaheed and Flowers and go and trade up and get an elite wide receiver? You think you can do it? Maybe Flowers and JMO and go get like Jamar Chase? You think you could do that, Tyler? Because I'd honestly be very intrigued to do so. Let's see here. Okay, cool. Okay, jumping back in the live chat. Super Dave says, if I could trade Singletary for Bowers, I would. Then I would be stuck with Spears, who's hurt. Yeah, let's not do that. Jason Zachary says, I had Bryce Young as my third quarterback in a super flex redraft. Should I fab dump for Andy Dalton as my third quarterback? You probably have to, depending on what your bye weeks are upcoming for your quarterback. So if in fact you're going to be impacted by a week 5 or 6 potential bye week, it would probably be in your best interest to fab dump a little bit in order to ensure that you have a second quarterback in a 2 QB super flex format in order to fill in for the absence of your third quarterback in this position essentially. Vlogs Gaming Music says, I'm going to try to trade Joe Burrow, Calvin Ridley, and Chuba Hubbard for Austin Eckler for Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. What do you think? If you can do it, more power to you. That's going to be very difficult, but if you can essentially do it, then hey, I think that's a fantastic trade for you. Robert says, hey, Andrew, how do we feel about giving Jaden Daniels and Zeke for Pollard? Starting quarterback currently is Hurts. Okay, that sounds good. Also, you remember telling a lot of people not to panic about Olave. They don't know. Okay, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. In this scenario, considering, again, you already have Jalen Hurts and you can trust him every game for the remainder of the season, trading for Pollard is a great overall option there. I think Pollard, again, he is the clear number one. And what we know thus far is that he's getting the opportunity. He's highly efficient. And additionally, Tyjae Spears is dealing with an injury. On top of it, the primary play caller head coach is Brian Callahan. He is, over the last 3 years with Cincinnati, he helped Joe Mixon be top 12 in each of those years. So why not Pollard this year? This is something that I talked about in terms of potential league winner running backs. Yes, I did mention Javonte Williams as one, but the other one was, a player of the caliber of Tony Pollard, and hopefully he can continue his pace thus far and just continue to deliver. So yeah, let's do it. Who could I deal Mason for? It depends. Are you trade? Okay, look, you can only deal Mason theoretically to a Christian McCaffrey manager, because why would someone want to buy him unless they had McCaffrey? Now, if somehow, some way you can deal him and get back, let's say, for example, Kenneth Walker, I'd do it, because you have to understand that this is a ticking time bomb. Even if you got something less, Aaron Jones, James Conner, I'll take those. Because essentially, if you don't have Christian McCaffrey, you are basically waiting. And eventually, yeah, maybe you've collected 6 wins with Jordan Mason, but eventually he's going to disappear. He's not going to be in your lineup anymore. He cannot be started after a while. And once that moment comes, if you didn't cash in on Jordan Mason, the latter half of the season is all that matters. It's what happens in the fantasy playoffs. So we're essentially just trying to prepare for that and trade up to get pieces to be ready for that moment. Adunze wasn't giving up on Caleb. That's for sure. But I don't think Keenan Allen will either. They showed Keenan Allen on the sideline. He was talking to Caleb the whole time. He's the veteran in that locker room. DJ Moore obviously is definitely pissed. But in this scenario, I think going forward, again, Keenan Allen, once he's back, is going to be so valuable. Full PPR rest of the season, DK or DJ Moore? DK Metcalf as of right now. I thought Caleb Williams would be way better than where he's at. Obviously, he needs a lot of help going forward. And again, he's a younger quarterback. It's his rookie year. He'll learn. But as of right now, yeah, it's DK rest of season. Let's see here. Send Baker Mayfield for Ridley, or should I trade Hurts? In a half PPR, I lost Debo. I have Hurts, Bijan, Etienne, Brian Robinson, Debo, DJ Moore, Cooper, Scary Terry, Deontay Johnson, and Bowers. Yeah, you're in a tough spot in terms of wide receivers. If you trade Baker Mayfield for Ridley, I think that either does one of two things. It either exacerbates the idea that you have a bunch of misfits at wide receiver that can't consistently score, or you get Ridley and he ends up playing very well and you're in a good spot. And quite frankly, the fact that you're only giving up Baker and you have Jalen Hurts, let's go for it. Let's give it a try. Looking to deal Mason for longer term, who do I target? Again, guys, if you can, I'm just going to name all the names. I'm going to look at the running back list right now, and I'm going to name all the names I would give up Mason for. I'm going top to bottom, okay? Obviously, you'd give him up for Kamara, Achane, Barkley, Hall, James Cook, Connor, Stevenson, Gibbs, Mixon, Pollard, Montgomery, Bijan, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Etienne, Taylor, Jacobs. I think that's Kenneth Walker. That's pretty much where it ends. I'm not giving him for Najee Harris. I'm not going to give him for Isaiah Pacheco. I'm not giving him for J.K. Dobbins. I don't think I'm doing that. I want concrete value that I know I can trust. Outside of that, let's go to wide receiver, right? Let's go knock on the door and get some wide receiver in return. Okay, scrolling down here, we had a question that came in from Ross Wong. Thank you, Ross. I appreciate it. Ross says the following. Hey, Andrew, I'm 2-0 this season. My quarterbacks are Love, Baker, Stevenson, Pollard, Charbonnet, Chase Brown, Zamir White, Collins, Chase, Devontae Smith, Keenan Allen, A.D. Mitchell, and Puka Nacua. I've tied in Schultz. Any space for upgrades? Yeah, Schultz needs to be upgraded immediately. In your position, considering all the depth you potentially have a wide receiver with Chase, Collins, Devontae Smith, Puka, Keenan Allen, you could end up positionally moving like Devontae Smith and theoretically going for Laporta. Additionally, you could also do the same for running back in terms of like, actually, no, you can't do the same at running back. You have Stevenson and Pollard, and that's it. Everybody else is kind of a superior or a sub option in terms of having opportunity, much less. Yeah, they're pretty much guys that, unless an injury happens in their backfield, are not going to play. So you would theoretically, in this scenario, either take Puka or Devontae Smith and try to trade him for a tight end. You could still get value out of Puka in that regard, but I don't know if people are going to be willing to trade for an injured player. So Devontae Smith would be like, hey, I'm trading you and I'm getting Laporta, and that's it. Outside of that, hit the waivers, get Hunter Henry. If not Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, and let's keep it moving. Tyler Von Essen says, appreciate you. Always been trying to snipe some trades. Thank you. Appreciate it. Best of luck on those trades. Do I worry about Wilson? Do I worry about Garrett Wilson? I don't know if I'm technically worrying about him. Obviously, I don't like the way that he's been utilized over the course of the first 2 weeks. I would have assumed that they would have utilized him more in the slot position. Let me actually check this out. How much slot work is he getting, essentially? Like, it seems like they're just not using him in the correct role. Like, yes, they leave him on the outside, but I don't know if Rodgers has got the arm for it anymore. He's played in the slot 40% in week 2, which again is trending in a better direction, but we got to get those numbers pumping up in terms of targets. 17 targets in the last 2 weeks isn't terrible, but 10 receptions is for a wide receiver of his caliber. So again, he's one of these wide receivers that, just like last year, there are going to be wide receivers that start slow. And if you don't believe me, I mean, I'll just go ahead and reference it right now. Let's pull up last season, 2023, weeks 1 and 2, and I'll show you, or I won't show you, but I will tell you exactly which wide receivers just didn't do anything in the first 2 weeks. So just looking at the history of fantasy football last season, right? First 2 weeks of the season, A.J. Brown had 16 fantasy points total. Okay? We remember that? Additionally, last season, weeks 1 and 2, let's see here. I'm looking for players that are like bigger name guys, obviously, because we used really high draft capital in this scenario. DJ Moore last year, first 2 weeks, 16.9 fantasy points. Another one. Didn't play well. Another player that was in this conversation in the first 2 weeks of last season, Jalen Waddle, 20 points only, 10 points in each week. Again, not the greatest. Amari Cooper, first 2 weeks of last year, 17 fantasy points. There is hope. Trust me, there is hope. Let me keep going down further. Let's see if there's anybody else from last year that was like awful in weeks 1 through 2. Let's see here. Anybody else that I can see off of this list? Doesn't seem like it. I think that's pretty much what it encompasses. So again, if A.J. Brown can come back from that and still finish as wide receiver 5, so can Garrett Wilson. I'm not too worried about it. Craig says, Hall and Hurts owner, by week 5, very well. Do I use waiver number 2 priority on Allen or Mayfield? Lost championship in 2022 due to Hurts injury in the playoffs. Yeah, that's rough. That is definitely rough. Okay, so in your scenario, you have Hall and Hurts. Fantastic. Are you using the number 2 waiver priority in order to get... In your scenario, I think it's more... I think I'm going for Braylon Allen there. That's the direction I'm going in. Yeah, that's the way that I would go about it. Craig, thank you. Ross Wong says, sorry, forgot to mention it's a full PPR. Got it, Ross. Again, yeah. Essentially, you need to ensure that you get you need to get a tight end. I would assume right now, it's just a matter of getting waiver wire help and just holding the talent you have until Puka returns. And then once Puka returns, then you have an opportunity of moving Devontae Smith, essentially. Until then, it's just improving that tight end from the waivers. La Raza sends in a question, says, Lamar, Bijan, Mason, London, Olave, Ayuk. Any ideas? I mean, look, at this point, London, Olave, Ayuk, I'm keeping. Bijan, I'm keeping. Lamar, I'm keeping. So Mason's the only guy that I'm moving. And all those running backs I mentioned earlier are guys that you could potentially go out and try to get. Obviously, you want the upper tier echelon players, ETNs of the world. Rashad White could be a guy. Rashad White could end up being a guy that you can go after, but it's just a matter of we have to somehow get value back because we are losing time every second that we don't trade him away. Every week you keep him, yes, it's going to help your team and you're going to immediately find immediate fantasy success. But ultimately, I'm even looking at this team roster and I'm thinking, go trade for McCaffrey. Like, how hard can it be? What other depth do you have potentially? Now, if it's going to be hard, so be it. Let's not fuck around with that. Let's just trade away Mason and try to recoup some value in that scenario. Again, a lot of the running backs that have not played well, specifically guys that don't score a lot of touchdowns as of thus far this season, the Jacobs, Taylors, ETNs of the world are the guys that I'm probably looking towards. If you can't get one of those guys, Aaron Jones, James Connors, those are the next guys on the tier list of opportunity guys that hopefully you could somehow pull because they haven't played actually, Connor's kind of been good. I mean, if he didn't fumble that time, against the Rams, he'd be even better, but you know what I'm saying. Let's see here. Dan Young says 2-0, 8-team, full PPR, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, 2 flex league. Is Anthony Richardson, okay, at quarterback. I have ETN, Mason, Dobbins, White, and Ford. Wide receivers are Tyreek Hill, Adams, Rice, Devontae Smith, Neighbors, JMO, tight ends, Laporta, any moves. I mean, listen, you're playing in an 8-team league. Essentially, every team in this league should be an all-star squad. So in your position, what I would do legitimately is I would take Mason, or I would take ETN, or I would take Dobbins, or I would take White. Any of those 4. Pair them with one of your wide receivers. Technically, like if you take ETN, I would be willing to take ETN and JMO, or ETN or maybe Dobbins and Neighbors. Go get me one of the best running backs in the league. Go get me Breece Hall. Go get me Bijan Robinson. Go get me Saquon Barkley. Any of them. Go trade 2-for-1s and try to make a huge upgrade here. Because you have so much effing depth, you could afford to take ETN and Devontae Smith and give them away to go get Breece Hall. And you should. Because you're going to start Adams, Rice, Tyreek every week anyway. Andrew, what's up, man? Should I trade Dobbins for Christian McCaffrey? If you have Mason, I would do it, yes. I mean, legitimately, I would. Does it have a lot of potential risk? Absolutely, but everything in fantasy has risk. Next week 3 can conclude, Dobbins tore his other Achilles. Like, anything could happen, right? So it's not like I'm sitting on my hands and just waiting for it to come. Like, you just have to be proactive. And in this scenario, getting him while you have Mason, I think kind of ensures your late season rise with McCaffrey on roster. Let's see here. Calvin75 says, trade Stroud, Dell, Charbonnet, and get Mahomes and Pacheco. I'm 2-0. I have McCaffrey, Mason, Henry, Jets. Okay, so yeah, let's do it. Yeah, give me the Pacheco Mahomes side of that. I don't have an issue with it. Technically, obviously you're going to be rostering 2 IR backs, but you're making a late term investment that once it appreciates, you could win the whole league here, Calvin, when Pacheco and CMC come back. Martin says, hey, what's up, man? Could you help me with my trade that I want to make? I give Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, and Kincaid. I also have Bowers. And Nick Chubb to get Achane and James Cook. Who wins the trade? Okay, in my honest opinion, jeez Louise. If you trade for Achane, there is a possibility that Achane is not going to be as good because of the absence of Tua. Now, if in fact Achane retains value, James Cook is continuing to play as well as he has. I'm not talking about putting up 30 points or scoring 3 touchdowns at halftime. I'm talking about just being a solid top 14 running back, just like Joe Mixon. If he can sustain that value, I think Achane and Jamar Chase are relatively equals. I think Joe Mixon and I think James Cook are relative equals. So basically, you'd be giving up Kincaid and Chubb for free. That's the way I see it. So it makes me just want to keep the Jamar Chase Mixon side, unless you're just thinking, I got to get out of Mixon because of his injury. That's the only reason I could see why you would make this trade, Marlon. What do we do with Tua and Hill? The main guy. Look, here's the thing about Tua, right? The report came out on Sunday, and I don't know how legitimate the report is, but I saw a couple like trustable sources kind of redistribute it in terms of the let me see. What was the exact quote here? Tua, no, I think it was like no plans to retire. I think that was the quote that kept going around from Ian Rappaport. And then I also saw Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk kind of reiterate that. So if in fact that is true and Tua does not plan on retiring, that means that he plans on playing later this season. And the fact that he's not on the injured reserve, or there has not been a rumbling of him going to the injured reserve, leads me to believe that he is just in normal concussion protocol and he'll be back in 2 to 3 weeks, which makes me think I want to hold on to the the Achans, Waddles, and Tyreek Hills of the world. I saw Laporta in the chat and my brain broke. Makes me think I want to hold on to those guys. So now, that's what it makes me want to think. The issue is, we don't know. We have hope, but we have no concrete evidence that that is going to be the case. There could be a reality in which Tua doesn't play till week 15. There could be a reality. We just don't know. So it's kind of the risk versus reward. In some of these scenarios, like Tyreek Hill, I want to keep him because he is top tier value and he will still be beneficial to my roster even without Tua. But Waddle, he suffers. HN, he suffers. But is HN suffering enough? Is Waddle suffering enough to where I have to give them up for lesser pieces? Maybe you give it a week. Let's see how they perform here against the Seattle Seahawks secondary and defense. And if they can sustain their value even in the absence of Tua, then we hold on to them. And we keep them going. If in fact they have terrible weeks, then we'll continue to try to find a pivoting option there. But I think I almost want to hold because it's not like we have concrete evidence that says he's not playing. And until we get to that position, I'm not jumping. I'm not jumping yet. I'm not jumping off ship. Okay, we had a question that came in from Sebastian Alex. Sebastian, thank you very much. Sebastian says the following question. Hurts, Waddle, Ridley, Higgins, JT, Gibbs, Kamara, Ingram, Ertz, JSN, Chuba Hubbard. 2 flex, half PPR, 12-man league. Should I trade running back for a better wide receiver tight end? Okay, so you have Ingram and Ertz. Ertz will suffice until you need Ingram back from his injury. The running backs that you have are incredible. And quite frankly, I mean, I guess you could try to trade. So in your position, Sebastian, you could technically take Kamara and go get Jamar Chase. I hope you could be able to do so. You could go try it. Knock on the door and see if it answers. If it does, let's do it. Other than that, you could try to trade one of these running backs for A.J. Brown. I know he's injured right now, but that's tough. Those are the type of options you could theoretically get with the caliber of JT, Gibbs, and Kamara. And based on how well Kamara has played and how well the Saints have played, you can upsell him based on that production. So to answer your question, yeah, let's go knock on some doors. Let's see what kind of wide receiver talent we can get in return from for these kind of running backs. Of course, I want to keep Taylor. I want to keep Gibbs as the primary two. That's why I'm trying to sell the Kamara side of this, essentially. When I look at the wide receiver position, again, there is a lot of talent across the board, but there's a lot of injured talent. So like Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Debo dealing with injuries, Kupp dealing with injury, Puka dealing with injury. So the wide receiver position is relatively thin still. But if you can, lock in on a Jamar Chase, a Marvin Harrison, a Mike Evans, a Devontae Adams, a Nico Collins, those are pretty secure guys that have been top 12 options before and can do it again. Galactic123, thank you, Galactic. 12-man full PPR. I'm hurting at wide receiver because of Kupp and A.J. Brown. I got offered Jamar Chase and McBride for Breece Hall. I also don't have a tight end, thanks to Ingram. Take this deal? Question mark. You got offered Jamar Chase and McBride for Breece Hall. I think you take the deal. But my then follow-up question is, where are we getting a running back talent from? Can you trade Kupp for a running back? That's the question then. If you already have enough running back depth to be able to survive in the next couple weeks, then you're fine, and we'll figure it out once we get there. But I'll probably take this deal. John says full PPR, DK and DJ Moore for Jamar and Pollard. Yeah, I will take the Jamar and Pollard probably 11 times out of 10. Top waiver pickups. We will have a video out tomorrow. Again, that video will be including running back, wide receiver, tight end, kicker, defense, quarterback waiver wire pickups for week 3. Again, be patient. It'll be out tomorrow. And that's probably where I'm going to call it tonight, guys. I do appreciate for those of you who came through, for those of you who, of course, asked questions in the live chat, answered each other's questions. For those of you who send super chats, for those of you who click the like button, continue to support the channel in that regard. I appreciate it. Again, if you guys want my rankings for the remainder of the season every single Sunday morning, you can check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, first time deposit using code Andrew. That's all that requires. And every single Sunday morning for the remainder of the season, I will send you my rankings. But essentially, I'm thinking, let's see here. We've been live streaming for about an hour and 40. Typically, I want to keep these live streams every night to about an hour and 30. This is probably where I'll call it. Again, I got to go and prepare for tomorrow's video, but there's a lot of waiver wire options that are going to be very valuable. I think this week's waiver wire is so much more important than the weeks prior, and I think it's only going to continue to trend in that direction because of all the injuries that we are continuing to see hit really, really valuable fantasy options. Seventh Season sends in a super chat. This will be probably the final question that I answer. I have St. Brown, Cup, Rice, Dobbins, Barkley, and Worthy. Trade Rashad White and Worthy for Chase. Yeah, let's do it. I'm not even joking. Let's do it. God, that would be... I mean, if you can get away with it, sheesh. Yeah, that'd be great. All right, guys. I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow will be waiver wire pickups. Wednesday, running backs. Thursday, wide receivers. Friday, most likely hidden gems. Saturday, live stream. Sunday, actually, I'm live streaming every night for the remainder of the week. Remainder of the season, honestly. As long as y'all keep showing up, I'll continue to live stream. All right, guys. Thank you very much for all the support. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and cue the music. Have a good night, everybody. Peace.